Hi, and welcome to another WORT debate for the 2021 spring elections for the Common Council. I am Jade Isiri Ramos. I am your producer for all of these debates.
And my name is Shali Pittman. I'm the news director at WORT Community Radio.
All right, before we get started, there's a few quick notes. See all the candidates up for election as well as these debates in real time on our website at WORT.org, or you can just
WORTFM.org.
Thank you, Shali. Just click on the Spring Elections tab. You can also submit your questions for upcoming debates there and also see any of the debates we've already done archived on that tab as well.
And if you have questions or comments, please feel free to contact me at chali@wordfm.org or 608-321-9586. But that's enough. Now on to tonight's debate. Our candidates are Aisha Moe and current Alder Keith Furman. They are vying to represent District 19, located on Madison's west side and bordered by Lake Mendota, Middleton, and U.S. Route 14.
Since there are only candidates in this race, the election for this district will be on Tuesday, April 6th, and that is the spring election for all candidates.
And don't forget to vote. All right, now for our candidates. Aisha Moe is a resident of this district and a high school math teacher. In 2020, Aisha ran for state senate in the 26th district. Previously, she served as a diversity community organizer for the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, helping to organize communities on the south side of Milwaukee and in Madison, and helping flip Wisconsin's first Senate district in the 2018 special election. She also served as a legislative staffer in the state capitol.
And Keith Furman has served the Alder of District 19 since August 2018. Keith and his wife Sandy moved to Madison in 2013, and they live in the Spring Harbor neighborhood. He is a technology professional and most recently served as Chief Technology and Chief Strategy Officer for CenterX, a Madison-based healthcare technology company. Prior to moving to Madison, Keith and Sandy lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, where he served as chairman of the Hoboken Planning Board.
Thank you both so much for joining us tonight. In a minute, we will turn to the candidates for their opening statements, but first, a little bit about the rules. Each candidate will have 2 minutes per question, 3 minutes per question? 3 minutes per question. Each candidate will have 2 60-second rebuttals to use throughout the debate. Opening and closing remarks will be 3 minutes. Your microphone will be muted while the other candidate is speaking, and Jade will explain how time factors in.
Yeah, I will be acting as your timekeeper tonight. If you see me hold up this yellow card, pretty self-explanatory, but you have 30 seconds left. If you see this red card come up, you have run out of time. You've got a few seconds to wrap up what you were talking about, but we will gently tap your mute button if you continue to go on. We flipped a coin before going live, and Aisha Moe is going to start with opening remarks. Aisha, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you guys so much. So, my name is Aisha Moe, and I'm running for City Council here in Madison's 19th City Council District. But why am I running? We're in the middle of a pandemic, and people are losing their jobs, and they're losing their lives, and they're losing their businesses, and they're losing their loved ones. I've seen this firsthand when in August, my father died unexpectedly due to a heart attack. And in the middle of our grief, in the middle of a pandemic, my family lost our health insurance. And looking at my mom and my siblings and seeing just how vulnerable we are in that moment, I realized that the safety net that's supposed to be there for our community members when they go through trauma like this, it's not there. And I'm running because those vulnerabilities that I saw are my top priority. So my top priorities in this election are responding to the COVID-19 crisis, ending homelessness, reimagining public safety, protecting our environment, and building an economy that truly works for the working class. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aisha. And I'm sorry for your loss. Keith, you have 3 minutes for your opening remarks.
Aisha, I am as well sorry for your loss. Thank you all for having us tonight and hosting this debate. Prior to living in Madison, my wife and I lived in Hoboken, New Jersey. Hoboken had a notoriously corrupt city government, and I was actually pretty cynical about the possibility that a community member could make a difference. However, Sandy got involved in a grassroots effort to increase badly needed green space, and I reluctantly joined in. By organizing our neighbors and community, we were eventually successful at passing an open space tax referendum and transforming the makeup of our urban community. This initiative showed me the potential of community involvement and taught me that a committed group of neighbors can truly improve their community through local government. I ran for the District 19 vacancy on the council over 2 years ago because I believe in the power of local government to improve the well-being of our community. We serve our neighbors and are the closest to the issues that directly affect our community. This is what I consider the heart of my job, ensuring residents are kept informed and have opportunities to provide input on the issues that affect them. I work hard every day to connect people with resources and learn as much as I can about the options before council so I can best represent my neighbors. In fact, before I applied for the vacancy on the city council, I reached out to every neighborhood association in District 19 to listen to the community issues that were affecting them. My engagement with residents shapes my priorities. The issues that I emphasize are the priorities I hear directly from District 19 residents. There are 4 key issues that I'm prioritizing: fairness and equity, climate change, transportation, and amplifying the voices of residents through engagement. As a city, we are facing a long overdue reckoning with deep inequalities and the differing impact of public safety. Serious flooding experience in the district underscores the increasing urgency of our efforts to mitigate climate change and become a more resilient city. We must tackle the impact of COVID-19 on our community and city budget, and as our city grows, we must meet the growth with a long-term vision for smart transportation and infrastructure planning. While these challenging times offer uncertainty, they also offer an opportunity to deeply transform our city for a more equitable, safe, and green future. I'm running for re-election because I believe this moment requires experienced leadership. During my over 2 years on the council, I championed Watershed Studies and supported public safety changes, including the Police Civilian Oversight Board and the Independent Monitor. I helped advance the creation of bus rapid transit and increased funding and support for affordable housing. However, our work is far from over. While the issues facing our city are daunting, I'm galvanized by the unfinished business at this important time. I look forward to discussing these issues tonight.
Thank you both for those opening remarks. Move on to questions.
Yes, thank you so much. And now for our first question. A 2013 Race to Equity report found extreme racial disparities in Madison that continue to persist. Candidates, what, if any, tangible change has the city of Madison made in the last few years? And what tangible steps would you take as alder to shrink disparities in our city? Let's start with Keith, who has 3 minutes beginning now.
Sure. So that 2013 report was definitely very sobering to see documented the inequities that exist in our city. I think we have made progress, but certainly not enough, and COVID-19 certainly shows that. I believe we can address racial equity by taking an equity lens to every decision we make as policymakers. Historically, those with decision-making power both unintentionally and intentionally cause harm to marginalized communities through policy, whether through redlining the housing market, tying property taxes to education funding, or destroying the environment and water in marginalized communities. Local governments have often caused harm. With every decision that comes before me, I have and continue to commit to listen to the voices of those most impacted, ask the question of who benefits from changes, consider the impacts, both intended and unintended, of the proposed changes, and make decisions that move us towards greater equity. Only by making decisions with full intentionality towards equity can we begin to undo the racial inequities in our city. I think the things that we need to be looking at, and continuing to do is support for affordable housing, and support for community centers and community organizations in order to, as a community, work together to fix those racial inequities that are pretty clear.
Okay, thank you, Keith. And Aisha, you also have 3 minutes beginning now.
So, in regards to how the city has responded to racial inequity and how I, as Alder, will plan to address racial inequity in the city. As a mixed race Muslim American woman, I've learned to examine the world through a lens that requires me to look through the multiple aspects of my identity and really get to see the world through those different lenses. So I will work as City Alder to connect those dots and make sure that policies work for everyone with no one and nothing left out. I promise to be a voice for my community and amplify the voices of those in minoritized racial groups. Specific policies that I think would make a huge difference in Madison is the continued support for community control over policing. We've seen in this last summer, especially the movement, the grassroots movement from our community asking for this, and it got responded to. And we now have the Civilian Oversight Board. But that needs momentum and the support of alders to really make sure that we are keeping these structures in place to allow for community control over policing. Furthermore, I take a stand that homelessness need not exist in the city of Madison. It is truly a policy choice when we know rationally that there are enough homes for people. We just aren't able to get people into those homes. I stand for a housing guarantee in the city, which would make it so that people have a home to go to when we're asking people to stay home because of a pandemic. And lastly, I think that we need to implement a living wage for everyone in the city of Madison. And I think that starts at a $15 an hour minimum wage. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jade has our next question.
You both talked at the top about how COVID has changed the city. It has upended lives, it's caused financial hardship, and has closed opportunities for many. Several months ago, the Common Council passed a budget that was characterized by the mayor as painful. Before the pandemic, there were already many worthy projects deserving of staff time and city funds. We want to ask you what you will prioritize. A listener asked a very similar question. They said, will you work to get Madison back to normal after the pandemic, or will you use this disruption to create a new vision for our city? Since Keith started first last time, Aisha, you get to go. You have 3 minutes.
The COVID-19 pandemic and its impacts on our economy here locally has truly only shown us what has been missing for a long time. So when we see people are having issues and problems related to security in their jobs, security in their businesses, security in their healthcare or their housing, ultimately, these are issues that have existed for a long time and we're now just being exposed to this new stressor. I definitely believe that this is an opportunity for us as a community to really elevate and fill in those gaps that have been there for a long time. I go back to making a housing guarantee in the city of Madison. We've truly seen that the impact is a public health crisis when people don't have the ability to stay in a home. Moreover, I believe that the city can take on moratoriums for utilities, rent, and mortgage, as people are struggling to be able to afford these, afford rent and afford their mortgage and afford utilities when their work has let them go. I do know that the federal COVID funding has been incredibly helpful. It just has been, and we have to work in unison with every aspect and level of government in order to make sure that people are truly being taken care of and we're not just struggling helplessly and alone and vulnerably. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Aisha.
you.
Oh, sorry.
Keith, it is your turn. You have 3 minutes. How has the pandemic, how are you going to come looking at our priorities after the pandemic?
Thank you. I appreciate the question. I think our budget, having been through now 3 budget cycles, is always incredibly challenging. COVID-19 certainly made it even more challenging. The city definitely has a lot of needs. COVID-19 has amplified the inequities that exist in the city. I am very proud of the work that the city has been doing even before COVID-19 to try to fund programs that help with inequity, but we certainly can't do it alone. We rely on state funding, we rely on federal funding, and so we need to be incredibly intelligent about our budget and our funds towards what we put it towards, because there just isn't enough there. So we did have an incredibly challenging budget going into 2021, as the mayor said, and we made some difficult choices, but we're also very fortunate to be able to tap into our rainy day fund, which was money that we had been putting aside to deal with our deficit. We have created programs to help with the COVID-19 recovery, and actually I don't even like calling it a COVID-19 recovery. I do believe in the idea that we should be using this as an opportunity to reinvent our community and come to a place that all people are able to thrive, opposed to where we were previously. And some of those programs are a small business equity program, equity and recovery program that the city put in the budget. We have a COVID relief fund, and some of that money, in addition to a big chunk that we just got from the federal government, goes towards helping people avoid evictions. And we have some ownership programs. So we need to continue to support programs like that, and very smartly use the limited funds we have. The state does not let us just raise the budget as much as we want. We have very strict limits on how much we can raise the budget, how much we can tax our residents. So we have to really work between very narrow parameters. And I think we need to continue to be smart about making decisions that impact the community the most possible way. And we do that by working with organizations and by listening to the people impacted by our decisions.
Thank you. I just want to make sure there is no rebuttals for this question. All right, seeing none, I'll let Shali ask the next question.
Thank you so much for that answer. A few minutes ago, the issue of policing was brought up, and that's the topic of our next question. So, the City Council has recently created a civilian oversight board and independent police monitor position. Alders limited what and how much the Madison Police Department can receive from the Federal Military Surplus Program. They rejected a partial grant to fund more police officer positions. There is currently a proposal to ban or at least restrict the use of tear gas. And 2021 will bring a pilot crisis response unit for behavioral health emergencies. What do you think of these recent steps made by the council? And what, if any, additional policing reforms do you support, given the protests against police violence and several nights of civil unrest downtown this summer? Let's start with Keith, who has 3 minutes to respond.
Thank you. Very simply, I agree with the reforms that we have done so far, and I've been incredibly supportive of them. Aisha said earlier the idea that we need to be reimagining public safety, and I completely agree. We need to be properly funding our police, but our police need to be focused on crime. Right now, our police department has way too many responsibilities. They shouldn't be mental health counselors. They shouldn't be social workers. They shouldn't be mental health professionals. They shouldn't be education specialists. In the 2021 budget, as you had mentioned, there was $350,000 put towards a crisis response pilot. I supported and sponsored an amendment to increase that by another $250,000. Our pilot will be based on a similar program in Eugene, Oregon, called Cahoots, which sends trained professionals to people's homes instead of police officers to deal with mental health issues and other issues that you don't need an armed officer for. In 2019, about 20% of the 911 calls in Eugene, Oregon went to Cahoots, and that was about 24,000 calls. Only 150 times, so about 1% of those calls that actually required a police backup. So we know these programs can work. We know we don't need to be sending a police officer to every situation. I spoke to an officer last year, and they had said to us, when you send us to a school, a middle school, and a student's having an issue, we show up in uniform and we escalate the situation. We don't mean to, but that's just what happens. So the police are absolutely open to us doing this, and I think it's incredibly important for our community to do this, to look at alternative methods for responding to issues. I supported a tear gas ban. I supported the tear gas study, which is unfortunately only what we've ended up with at this point. There wasn't enough votes to get a tear gas ban, but I do believe we should prohibit tear gas. I don't think we should prohibit all forms of non-lethal weapons that the police are allowed to use, such as pepper spray. But I do think tear gas absolutely should not be used by our police department. I was a big supporter and actually the primary sponsor of restricting the Defense Department program called the 1033 to make sure that we were not getting weapons of war from our military. We've saved about $160,000 a year using this 1033 program, and luckily it's only been focused on things like night vision, flashlights, respiratory masks, first aid kits, but the police department will no longer be able to use that even if they wanted to buy things like tear gas and weapons.
Thank you so much, Keith. Aisha, you also have 3 minutes for your response to this question.
Across the country, we are asking our police forces to just do too much. When I talk about community control over policing, yes, it means things like supporting a civilian oversight board for our police and having an independent investigator. It's also about, for me, it's also about ensuring that the right professionals are there to address the issues that real families in our district are experiencing. When my father passed away due to an unexpected heart attack in August, my family's needs were not well met. We did call 911 and 6 police officers and 2 paramedics showed up. This was an incredibly traumatic experience for my family. And even though there were all these police officers there, we felt entirely and completely lost and vulnerable. I remember one of the officers kept trying to ask my sister, who is a minor, for a statement, and she just stared blankly and void. And I remember thinking to myself, if there had been one social worker or one person truly trained in trauma response who could have been there, maybe it wouldn't have been so lonely. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about having a community show up for each other and having the right types of professionals show up for each other. It's about being there for the types of experiences that members of our community are really having. Yes, I think that what the city has done so far is a really good start, but it won't stay on its own. And we need to continue the momentum to ensure that our communities are safe. And we really reimagine what public safety means for ourselves and keeping each other safe. And using the resources that we do have available to us to fund programs that really make a difference for real people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any rebuttals for this question? No? Okay.
All right, we'll move on to our 4th question. Your district is geographically quite large. It has 18 neighborhood associations, according to the city website. And it is a district with lakefront homes, condominiums, apartment buildings, single-family homes for both homeowners and renters. Can you describe how your district has been changing and how you will support its evolution? Aisha, we start with you. You have 3 minutes.
So our district has a lot of components, as you pointed out. I think that when it comes to developing and addressing the growth that our community is facing, we need to really start with what are people who live in this district, who really live in this district and really work in this district, what is their experience of it? So when we're talking about housing options for people in the district, we need to make sure that it's truly affordable for the people that actually live here. Not profitable for developers, but truly affordable for our residents. And that's why it takes such a hard stand that we have a guarantee, like a housing guarantee for our city, because the market as it is right now is not helping young professionals and young families move into and really create themselves in this district. And additionally, I think that currently as it is, the public transit system isn't best addressing our young working professionals either. I think it needs to be expanded and truly having more options for people who do take the bus. I remember just having to, I would miss the bus going down to campus years ago. I would miss the bus and I would have to wait another hour to get the bus. And at that point, I'd miss class. And I just thought it would be really nice, you know, to have options that made this workable for real people.
Thank you for that answer. Keith, we'll turn to you for 3 minutes.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more about improving bus service. We desperately, as a city, need much better bus service. I come from the New Jersey area, and we just had good, reliable bus service. I actually didn't even need a car in Hoboken and didn't have a car for quite some time. We need to improve that. The district is a big district. A big chunk of it is or at least a big chunk of it is, I would consider, is the Odana area, which is currently undergoing a study by the planning department that started the middle of last year. And we just actually had some follow-up meetings this week to present some options to the community. And it matches up with the city's comprehensive plan, which says we need some more medium and high density buildings in the district and throughout the city. And so the Odana area plan and that area from Whitney Way, and the whole plan goes a little bit past where the mall is, but the district the district boundaries are Schrader Road, Whitney Way, and Gammon. In between that undeveloped area and Mineral Point. So there's a lot of opportunity for new growth there. You know, definitely more density, more affordable housing, more businesses. That's where I think you're going to see a ton of the growth in the district. And the city is essentially putting together through public input this area plan, which is supposed to make zoning easier for the next 50 plus years to encourage that type of development, to set up that area to be developed more and deal with the increased need for housing. And business space, office space for our community. I think at some point, you know, you'll see them all probably, you know, we're already seeing them all change into different configurations. So I think you'll see a lot more development there, and I'm really excited about the work that the city is doing, and all the different impact, all the different opportunities the community has had to make an impact on that plan. So I think that will be the big growth. But as you said, there is a lot of single family housing. I don't expect that to change much, but I do think in the underutilized areas of the district, like the Odana area, like some spots on University Avenue, we certainly should be looking at more medium to higher density to fulfill the growth that our city continues to experience.
Thank you. Before we move on, I want to make sure there's no rebuttals for this question. All right, we'll turn to Shali.
Fantastic. I also just want to let our listeners and watchers know that we're coming up on the listener question segment. So please start having those questions pour in, comment wherever you're watching, or tweet at us, or yeah, those are the options. Please do let us know what your questions are because we want to ask them. But our next question is about the environment, of course. This question was submitted by 350 Madison, which is a local group committed to raising awareness of the need to address climate change. They're very excited about these debates. Local leadership make many decisions that impact the climate, from development and transportation to stormwater runoff and flooding. The folks at 350 Madison ask, if elected, how will you help Madison adapt to climate change impacts we are already experiencing in this city? Let's start with Keith, who has 3 minutes for a very broad topic.
Thank you. As I mentioned in my opening, I mean, we absolutely are experiencing the effects of climate change already, and we do have to adapt to it. About a week into my term, I was hosting my first office hours at the Aisha Moe Library, and I was wondering why nobody was coming. I had publicized it and told people, and all of a sudden somebody comes inside and says the high point is a river. And the library at some point lost power, and that was August 20th, the storms of August 20th, 2018, that really hit the District 19 pretty severely. A lot of house flooding. I saw cars floating away. It was not the first flood on the west side, and it certainly hasn't been the last. But I'm proud of the efforts that I've worked with the city on in working towards figuring out how to mitigate that going forward. Some of those efforts have included a watershed studies. And so what that does is it looks at how water flows in different areas of the district, so we can better understand how we can capture the water, how we can divert the water. We're not going to prevent it. We're seeing these storms obviously get larger and larger. There are all sorts of metrics about a 100-year storm, and we're seeing 100-year storms way too often, so they're not even 100-year storms. It has to do with probability. It's a terrible name, but that's what they call it. But I think we obviously need to figure out what to do with that water. I have supported the recent changes of our stormwater ordinances. We can't do this alone. We need help from private developers and the community to figure out what to do with water. And so the new stormwater ordinances have increased the retention requirements for new developments, and I think that will absolutely help. We also need to figure out how to incentivize green development. The state precludes us from requiring green development, and so we need to figure out what we can do to incentivize that, because that definitely will make a difference. So, I'm eager to implement the recommendations that are coming out of the watershed studies. I've already been working with staff and talking about figuring out how to increase the size of retention ponds, for example, in the Wexford area. And so I think it's been incredibly important. It's incredibly important, to take the short and long-term view. I think a lot of residents would like to see us, mitigate that stuff overnight. But luckily, they've seen the city in action. I've been to every focus group in the district. There's, I think, it was close to a dozen focus groups where there were these small groups where we actually walked around with the people and understood how they were affected by the August 2018 storms, and that really helped the city validate their model and understand what they were looking at, as I said, for how water flows. So there's a lot of work to do, but I'm proud of the city's commitment, and I've been proud to support the city's commitment towards addressing those issues.
Thank you, Keith. Now, Aisha, you also have 3 minutes for your response.
All right. In regards to how are we going to deal with climate change at the city level, this is an incredibly important issue that's going to impact us for our future. And I make a stand that we have the opportunity right now to create a bold and compassionate future. The actions we take right now will impact us for years to come. Now, what are some things that we can do right now that can either mitigate the impacts of climate change, or at least adapt to the changes that already exist? Well, first off, I take the stand that we need to ban toxic chemicals that end up as runoff in our waterways. Here in Madison, we have a lot of very beautiful lakes and waterways, and right now we have toxic chemicals like PFAS that are poisoning them. And we need to take a stand to get rid of them and really create other options. Moreover, I support increasing accessibility to public transit, making it fare-free, so that people can really actually use our public transit system, as well as expanding it to really making sure that people can use it and we can lower our carbon emissions as a city. Moreover, I support creating more green spaces for our city, especially in our district. And lastly, I just want to say that in regards to relating to climate change, we need to take a stand that we are truly making changes and actions and taking them now to support an environmentally just city, whether that be through promoting environmentally just job creation, a public transit system, or just how we approach development in general. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aisha. It's a large question, I know. Do either of you have rebuttals or things that you want to tack on to what the other said? You do have 2 to use throughout the debate, so don't be shy.
All right, seeing none, we will move on to listener questions. We're going to go ahead and keep these at 3 minutes since we're doing pretty good on time. So this question was submitted before we gathered here today, which is, how has COVID changed how you campaign? If the pandemic continues into your term, which seems likely, how will you reach out to your constituents and make sure that they are being heard? Aisha, we will start with you.
So COVID has, the impacts of COVID have reached into sort of like tentacled into every aspect of our lives. For instance, we're over Zoom right now, or not Zoom, but some sort of video chat. And you see that in lots and lots of spaces where we're more moving things online. Campaigning is no different. It turns out that when you take the coolest tool out of a campaigner's toolbox, which is knocking on doors and getting that face-to-face, shaking hands, like connection, like you're not allowed to do that because it is really dangerous. You recognize, okay, well, we're gonna have to get that like to the voter, to each person. How do you get that contact? And it's through Zoom videos and it's through phone calls. And that's how it has impacted campaigning. And if it continues into this first term, which it likely might, yeah, it's that same thing. Phone calls, video chats, being there and available to people from wherever, whether it's, you know, your bedroom or the kitchen, because we can't go anywhere else. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we'll move to Keith. You also have 3 minutes to talk about how COVID has changed campaigning.
Thank you. 2 years ago, when I ran for election, I became an expert walking in the ice and knocking on over 2,000 doors. I really appreciated that engagement with the residents, meeting people, hearing their stories, talking to them about issues that matter. And I'm really disappointed we're not able to do that with COVID this year. And so what I actually announced last weekend is I'm going to be doing virtual front porch sessions. I have a really cool Bernie meme on my website showing people where I'm actually setting up times that will be similar to my open office hours, where people can come in and drop by and talk. I'm letting people know that they can call me. I'm letting people know that they can email me, and I'll continue to engage them like I do as Alder. So currently as Alder, I do office hours twice a month. I've been doing that since I've been in office. I did that in coffee shops and the library before COVID. And once COVID hit, I've been doing that via Zoom, and had a great response to people coming and chatting with me during my open office hours about different issues. I advertise that via the city blog. I respond to all my emails and calls and make sure that I continue that level of engagement. I was very involved in something called the Task Force for Government Structure that looked at how we improve engagement with our residents, and that's everything from the structure of the council to our committees to people being able to follow and get involved in issues. I never could have dreamed that we would have been holding meetings in our homes. I thought we were so far away from that. We actually have thought maybe we would let people be able to testify at meetings, not coming downtown, but go to the library. And thank goodness people are now able to testify at meetings via their cell phone. And they don't have to come out late at night and wait really late to talk. They can testify from their couch. I think we need to continue to improve that technology. I think we need to figure out how people can leave us video messages, leave us a lot more comments easier so they can engage. So I think COVID really has, I don't expect the council to meet in person. We haven't met in person for close to a year. It will be in March. I don't expect the council to meet in person for quite some time. And so I expect it to continue to see these virtual meetings. Then we need to figure out, what do we want this to be going forward? Do we want to do, we've talked about hybrid meetings where some people are home, some people are on person. So we really need to look at that and figure out what works best for the community, and also recognize not everybody can use a computer because maybe their child is using the computer, or maybe they don't have good internet. So we need to figure out ways for people to still engage with us, even if they don't have the internet access or the availability of a device during a meeting. So this is something that I've spent a good deal of time on the last year, is figuring out, how we quickly adapt to COVID and what the long term looks like for COVID engagement.
Thank you so much, Keith. Are there any rebuttals from either candidate? Any follow-ups? Okay, Jade has the next listener question.
Yeah, so this one comes to us from Twitter. It says, how will you tackle homelessness, and why is it taking so long to approve camps and shelters? Since we started with Aisha last, we'll start with Keith this time.
Sure. So I think we need to continue to work with the county on tackling the homeless problem in Madison. The city announced a new homeless shelter this week. That was the second attempt at finally putting together a new homeless shelter. I think as a city we have struggled with funds for tackling the homeless problem, and luckily, through some state help and federal help, we are able to focus on that more. But it's an incredibly hard problem to solve. It requires not only housing, but also obviously requires mental health services. I think as a city, we need to continue to invest in things like Housing First. The Housing First development on Tree Lane on the border of our district, unfortunately, was implemented really poorly. And I think that really has slowed down the process of doing more Housing First. That particular development was focused on making sure that you put a roof over people's homes immediately. Housing is a need, not a want. And so Housing First was focused on the idea of let's get a roof over people's heads, have somewhere to stay, and then start working on the problems that cause them to be homeless. And that's tons of different services on helping them get a job, mental health services, etc. The Tree Lane project was not implemented with enough support staff, and the neighborhood certainly saw impacts because of that. And I think there has been hesitation to do additional projects like that going forward, that needs to change. We absolutely need to be addressing our homeless issue more aggressively in the city, and I think this new homeless shelter that was announced this week is certainly a good step forward. And we're also seeing, unfortunately, a lot more homelessness because of COVID-19. So I think that we need to continue to invest funds in shelters and services, and not stop until obviously we've given people an opportunity to have a roof over their head.
Thank you, Keith. Aisha, it is your turn to answer this question.
Thank you. I prioritize having a housing guarantee for our city, which means that everyone has a space to be in. A housing first approach to homelessness recognizes that it's really hard to get the other aspects that impact people, whether that be, for instance, mental health issues or job insecurity or food insecurity. It's a lot harder to get those things managed when you don't have a place to go home at night. Of course, not having a place to go home at night would impact your mental health. So a housing first priority is absolutely the stand I take. I believe that there are there's more that we can do than just sort of wish it got better. And we can take actions right now, because ultimately we know to some extent that there is enough housing out there. It's just that the market is swayed in such a way that it makes it unaffordable or unobtainable for people. I believe that you could implement a policy that would encourage landlords to actually put tenants in homes and increase funding for the city that could allow us to have a public trust. How would that look? So we would, as a city, increase taxes on housing that doesn't have tenants in it. So housing that's going left empty. You could make it so that that funding could then be used to buy property that the city could give to people. And by doing that, you're able to sort of manage the impacts of, well, the increased costs that there is on the city to be able to afford people housing, and really address it right then and there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any rebuttal? Yeah, we're gonna let Keith, you have a minute for rebuttals.
The idea of taxing vacant properties does sound like a good idea. Unfortunately, we can't do that. The state doesn't allow us to do that, so we certainly have to work with the state to get the law to change. And most of the time, when Madison wants to do something, the state has no interest in helping us do it. So, unfortunately, impossible to do, at least until we get some state action. I'd also want to say the vacancy rate in Madison is incredibly low. So we need to figure out ways to continue to build housing and support affordability in that house. We can't mandate or require developers to put affordability in their housing developments, but we can certainly provide them with resources, which we have as a city, to encourage affordable housing. The city has invested $29.9 million in an affordable housing fund in the last 5 years, and we've gotten $197 million in WIDA tax credits from that investment. So we've done an incredible job of leveraging the limited resources we have, but we still need to do more.
All right. I just want to say thank you for having a rebuttal. I like when people have rebuttals. Keith, you have 1 remaining, and Aisha, you have 2, so feel free to use them. We have some time. So the next listener question is from the same person who asked the above question, and they ask, what do they disagree about? Which frankly, this isn't the first debate that we've heard that question. I'm going to phrase it a little bit differently. What results will your constituents see if you are elected to represent them that they might not see if your opponent is elected to represent them? And we're keeping this nice and friendly as a debate, but just on a policy level, what results will your constituents see if they vote for you? Oh, sorry, I forgot to say who goes first. Let's start with Aisha. Aisha begins.
All right. So I want to start by saying I respect Keith, and I want to make sure that that's right there. I got into this race because I saw that there was something missing. There's an incredible opportunity, especially with the momentum and the vulnerabilities that we're seeing in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic, as well in the areas of policing and racial justice, that were not being answered, and having a stand taken for them that was bold enough, in my opinion. I really wanted to see someone take a strong stand and really say what they wanted for our city and have a bold response and really get how this shows up for real people in their real lives. And through my lived experience as a young person who entered an economy in the middle of a pandemic, as a young woman of color, I have a lived experience that I think is missing at the city council. And I believe that that's how constituents can expect to see my candidacy differ from Keith's.
Thank you, Aisha. I understand this is a tricky question, but listener generated. Keith, you have 3 minutes to also answer the question.
Sure. So yes, it's certainly a difficult question. I'm not going to make any assumptions about how Aisha would do the job. I think the only thing I can do is tell you how I've done the job and how I'll continue to do the job. It's incredibly important for me to actually do what can be done in the job. I think it's very important to understand the systems. It's very important to understand what we can do. I've been incredibly supportive of the police oversight board and the independent monitor. I believe Aisha is pushing for more civilian control over the police department. It's not legally possible. We'd have to get the laws changed. I'm completely supportive of the laws changing, but it's an example of having to understand what's possible and what just sounds good as a soundbite. And so I'm not accusing, and I apologize, I didn't mean to accuse Aisha of making a soundbite, but it is incredibly important for me to understand what can be done. And I do work with, residents and city staff and our legal department to really understand, what change can we do in the parameters that we have. As I said earlier, the state makes it incredibly difficult for us to do innovative things. Especially when Scott Walker was governor, we would try something like set a minimum wage of $15 an hour for city-related stuff, and they smacked us down pretty quickly. So it's important to continue to figure out how you actually get things done, and that's what I would do. Engagement's incredibly important to me. As I've noted, I do office hours, and I will continue to do that. Not everybody has time or has been able to reply to every email they receive, but I make it a point to make sure everybody gets a response. I'm willing to have tough, difficult conversations with residents, and certainly, have changed my mind based on those conversations, but also pride myself in explaining things to people that they may not have understood. It's a complicated job that I'm proud that I've been able to put a lot of time and energy into, and hope to do that again in a new term.
Okay, and I want to remind candidates that you both have rebuttals remaining. Would either of you like to use those? No? Okay, I understand this question. Not fun. Okay, we go to Jade now.
Thank you both for tackling that difficult question. It is now time for our final remarks. You both have 3 minutes, and we will begin with Keith Furman.
Oh, sorry. I thought because I thought I would get to say it last because she started, but this is that. So I'm going first. It's fine either way.
I think we've been alternating.
Okay. Sure. So Madison is a great city that needs to do a lot more to be truly great for everyone and to ensure its long-term health in the face of increasing inequality and climate change. There are 4 main issues I have been and will continue to prioritize as your alder: fairness and equity, flooding and climate change, transportation, and as always, constituent engagement. Even in the best of times, Madison has not been a community in which everyone has an equal opportunity to thrive. The solution to the deep inequalities in our city is not straightforward and simple. However, by rethinking how we invest in our public safety and community resources, we can move towards being a city where we all feel safe. I don't have all the answers, so I'm committed to continuing to listen to those most impacted, questioning who benefits from policy changes, considering the unintended consequences, and making decisions that moves us towards greater equity. Part of my time on the council, I spent 20 years working for and running small businesses. That work required figuring out how to make the most of limited resources, balancing the needs of different stakeholders, and ensuring that employees had the tools they needed to be successful. I learned that while both people and communities have the same functional needs, there are nuances in each situation that matters. This experience is invaluable for the work of making Madison a more just, safe, and resilient city. I have the necessary tools and relationships to navigate the complexity of our local government in this crucial moment. Your voice is critical to my role, and I am proud to have made engagement with District 19 central to my time on council. I host frequent office hours, make myself available via phone and email, and as always, strive to be straightforward about my positions. One of the things I'm most proud of during my time as alder is the number of emails I receive after discussing issues with constituents that say, I may not completely agree with you, but you've helped me understand the issue, and I appreciate your honesty. Engaging Madisonians doesn't stop with District 19. I've also championed efforts to expand and improve resident engagement on a citywide level through the Task Force on Government Structure and transition to virtual meetings. I'm not suggesting as alder I can completely solve climate change or eliminate poverty or racism. I cannot. However, I'm committed to taking an equity lens on all policies so that we can move Madison towards greater equity. I believe this critical time for our city requires experienced and proven leadership. My experience on the council has given me a deep understanding of what is possible through local policy and defines my solution-based approach. And through thoughtful and just policy, I believe we can move our city closer towards a place where we can all of us can thrive and grow. You can learn more about my campaign at keithfurman.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith, for those final remarks. And Aisha Moe, your 3 minutes are now.
Thank you guys so much for hosting us and hosting this debate, hosting all the debates. Yeah. Okay. So in closing, I just want to say that what I am out to create by running for city council is starting a conversation and letting people know that we have an amazing opportunity to create a bold and compassionate future that starts right now. As a mixed race Muslim American woman, I have grown up with multiple perspectives and examining the world through those multiple perspectives. You can count on me to connect the dots between that lived experience and make sure that policies work for everyone with no one and nothing left out. How can you trust me to be a voice for our community? Because I promise to listen and amplify voices of everyone in the community, including the historically marginalized members of our community. To find out more about my campaign, you can go to my website at aishaformadison.com. And my name is spelled right there, so it's AISHA for Madison.com. You can also follow us on Facebook or on Twitter at Aisha for Madison. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to share with you, and please reach out. I love to get responses from members of our community. If you have questions, I'd love to answer them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aisha. And thank you both so much again for joining us. I feel like I know District 19 better just from hearing both of your responses. I really do appreciate your time. Thanks also to the viewers for participating, for several folks who asked questions, and to Alec Highest Wins on Twitter. That's at Highest Wins on Twitter, who actually live tweeted this debate. And you are the first debate from WRT to be live tweeted, which is very, very cool. So thank you, Alec, for doing that.
And if you are interested in what's happening on the West Side, again, we're staying here. It's District 10 at 7 p.m. It's enough time for us to all get some dinner. I'm Jade Siri Ramos. Don't forget that the spring primary, if you are in a district, these people aren't in the district, is spring primary Tuesday, February 16th, and then these two will face off on Tuesday, April 6th.
There are other primaries, though, so there will be always something on your ballot, including the superintendent race. So make sure to go vote in all the elections, folks. I'm your host, Shali Pittman. Thank you again so much for watching, and have a good night.